Today we are reacting to the Fortnite storyline and where it went.
Let's get into it.
Fortnite has abandoned the storyline. It's the #1 complaint I see that's
Donald
only getting worse.
Mustard.
Well, the creator of the story has spoken out, and now we've learned what's changed, the reason for him leaving, and why many say Fortnite's storyline isn't the same. You see, the story is always tied the chaos together. It turned the game from a simple battle royale to a fully fledged adventure that we, the player, had to craft.
I think it's
Donald Mustard
cool.
was the architect of it all, and his boldest decision was choosing the island as the central character
either
of his
love or
vision.
hate that guy.
But ironically, at the same time, he shared exactly what would make him retire. Now in 2024, this simple sketch is reality. And despite it being Donald's plan, he had no idea achieving this would take a massive sacrifice. Over 6 years, I wanted to tell the origin story basically of the metaverse, or of what if there was a shared reality where you could just go and be in this multiverse of possibilities.
Yeah, that's like Lego Fortnite, Fortnite Festival.
But an island would always remain constant. When the Meteor event first started, he wanted people to see the inevitability of this thing getting closer and closer every day. What's gonna happen when this hits the island? Donald's gamble paid off, with more eyes on Fortnite than ever before. This way of telling a story through the environment itself,
remember landing on the meteor and then dying to fall damage.
Like a simple meteor would be the birth of a 6-year plan. The mystery of the visitor was one thing, but Donald decided to take this further.
Yeah, I remember that
fans
guy.
are busy trying to figure out the secrets of the crater, Epic was already full steam ahead, designing a story character that would move in real time. The cube appeared and physically changed the map as it rolled around and went
was a
viral.
classic.
The entire internet came together, sharing the theories as to what this cube was, and they even came up with their own name, Kevin. In a single day, the cube turned from a drawing on Donald's whiteboard to a character that the community felt ownership of. Something we all helped to create a story for.
I love just landing on that island.
Or what his purpose was, that was for players to figure out. Epic would never reveal the story directly. Everything was laid out with clues and callbacks to events, something they would forget in just a few years.
Yeah, like it fell into the lake, and then the lake you could double bounce on.
There's only a handful of characters, but they were already dropping clues.
So do you like the storylines?
To be honest, yeah, that just gives more depth to the game.
Okay, because I was watching Cypher, and he's like they're not really. He just doesn't care that much. He's just that's his perspective. But he's I thought it was interesting, but I like it overall.
True.
I mean, I think it makes.
I remember the Ghost in Shadow. I was like picking sides and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cube tried to blast a hole in Loot Lake at the same spot where the vault will be shown over half a year later.
Yep, the vault event.
Each
Everyone
event was connected to the last,
everyone chose the drum gun, man.
And this was a part of the genius secret.
And
not only were players drawn in, as everyone could watch the same thing live,
he wants the Infinity Blade back.
About it. Reasons why an Ice King was covering the map in snow, or why a giant robot was fighting a one-eyed monster. Epic had us right where they wanted us. Our love for live events made us desperate for a way to connect them. The perfect time to introduce the 7. They updated the visitor from all those seasons
like
ago,
the scientist,
revealing him to be part of this brand new group. And little did we know they would be the key for years to come. As they worked together to build rockets around the map, Fortnite was planting nostalgia for an event that was barely a year old. And this time they were doing it even better. The next step in this multi-year plan was
I got my first elimination there.
That's cool.
With the legendary minigun.
With the groundwork laid, it was time for Epic to kick things into full throttle. Donald knew they couldn't make a sequel for a live service game, so he came up with this event called The End, taking Fortnite offline for 3 days.
I remember, I freaking cried because it was offline, and then I was like, "Whoa, this is sick!"
That's a sick view.
All the new gameplay features.
I still have that loading screen.
There was also something weird going on. Weekly loading screens would show a hidden story between the
this was all like I was confused and everything. Like, why are
what the heck?
Yeah, why are they
fighting each other?
What was dismissed as a filler quest turned out to be super important. Once again, a theme that no longer exists. We knew about the 7 and their mysterious plans, but now it's time to have a villain. Every good story needs a bad guy.
Oh my gosh.
In the best
this event was a classic for me. I mean,
with months of build.
Bro, that event was just classic. I still have that skin. I wanted that skin so much. I remember just walking there. I was like, "You look sick. I want your skin. Give me, please."
That's your favorite, huh?
Yeah.
This was the season where I personally got into the story, looking at the tiny
Midas is cool.
This season is one of the most best seasons.
It was incredible.
Shadow and Ghost.
When the devs teased something, players could piece it together on their own. I had my own theories, others had theirs, and it genuinely brought fans together like no other game. When the device was activated, no one predicted what would actually happen.
The next season, it was just
surprise
flooded.
as we were introduced to Agent Jones in a fully animated cutscene. This appealed to casual fans who were taken back at their first human in an event, and it got storyline lovers racing to figure out.
That guy looked really surprised. Barely. What was that?
The beauty of all of it was how Fortnite was so good at asking questions. For every answer they gave players, it would come with 10 more mysteries. Who was on the phone?
Yeah, they keep
Jonesy
it
wearing a suit and tie?
suspenseful.
What was surprising about being able to hear?
Yeah, I know.
It was the beginning of the story storyline's
little
golden
confused.
age.
And
Now
then
they
boom,
can introduce people
Shark
with
kills
dialogue,
him.
character development,
Midas is down in the
cutscenes. There
underworld,
was so much
at least to
potential.
this season.
But it
Ooh, I like
was
that
also
beard.
time for Epic Games.
I want a
As
character
Bunker
with a
Jones
beard
gameplay.
like that.
It had been
Yeah.
lurking in BR for a while, but most
Probably not
crossovers or
good,
outfits, maybe a POI, it never affected the storyline, except Donald didn't want that. I went and met with everyone, with Marvel, with
Jeez, how
DC,
rich
and would
is
say,
Donald?
here's what we could do together. Here's what the story is. I would take people through the next 6 years. Marvel was on the fence, but she was able to secure
John Wick.
I
He's
want
in the shop right
dude,
now.
I want
He's
that
in the
skin,
shop
man.
right
That's
now.
a really good
Now
skin.
the plan was coming to
It looks
fruition, as
just
Fortnite had
like
announced
him.
a Marvel season, which would clearly put the story on the back burner.
This
now that's not
is
what
my
happened.
favorite
Donald
season.
found a way to tie
Favorite season.
Galactus in.
That was my
We learned
first
that he was
battle
summoned
pass
to
too.
the island because of the black hole, opening the door for insane theories. I mean, players love this. It truly felt like the perfect balance between
Yeah,
the
this was
metaverse
just
and
like-
an original story.
We were
Epic had
like,
struck
we
gold.
got
They were
armed battle
keeping
buses
Fortnite's
and we were
identity
shooting them
while
down.
padding it full of amazing characters.
He ate us
and that's
and we
exactly
had
what
bombs
happened with
inside.
Zero Crisis. They found a way to merge crossovers
He's like,
with
This-
Agent
I'm outta here.
Jones after
This had the best like game mode thingy. Like when you logged into Fortnite, you would just see this like game mode thing that you had to play. As long as you didn't click off of it, you could play it for a long time. And I played that for a while. It was just like you got to use your 0-point gun to capture all the rifts
Yeah.
and stuff. And it was my favorite live event.
For
Yeah, that sounds
years,
cool.
Zero Point was finally doing its job, allowing any universe to come to Fortnite, and the IO
boy.
were the ones in control. Every single reality log was an advertisement for an upcoming crossover, but it was also essential to the storyline.
Mandalorian, I still
There
have
were
him.
so many layers to the Zero Crisis finale.
Like,
Once
stop
again,
playing
it
that
seamlessly
season.
explained how the battle pass is relevant with no sudden
See,
jumps
there's the-
between
there's the
seasons.
device
It got
he
to
gave
the
us.
point where
Very
Epic was
cool.
willing to trust Donald entirely, designing massive live events around the
Dr.
Imagined
Sloan.
Order, new
I
factions
came
like
back
The
during
Last
that season
Reality,
for just
and
a
even
little bit.
casting the most expensive actor
And then
in
The
world.
Rock.
Oh
I think
my
I first started
gosh.
talking to
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson right at the start of COVID, but Epic wouldn't acknowledge it was him playing the foundation. Donald
honest,
wanted
I was
people to
just
think they
like,
were hearing Johnson,
man.
but weren't sure. To me,
I'm a little
that was
over
part
The
of
Rock,
there's this
man.
helmet.
Yes, The Rock was now basically
There's
the
just
face
so
of
much
Fortnite.
of him out there.
If only they
Yeah.
realized the
He's in,
problem
like,
it
every
creates
movie.
when your main character is also
Exactly.
one of the busiest actors out there. They had to film most of his appearances in one session, so everything needed to be planned in advance. Now, luckily for Epic,
Mbappe.
Donald had planned years ahead, but internally, a battle was starting to happen. We were about to head into Chapter 3. the
Yeah, I remember
culmination
that.
of
That
years
was
of build-up.
classic.
The Seven
Classic.
and the IO had been at each other's throats for centuries, so with the Chapter 2 finale, they decided
that'd be
to
crazy
light
if
the
all this
match
wild
and
stuff is
trigger
really
a
going on in
war.
space.
It felt a little rushed, and in the background, there was a
Just
reason
swimming
for
in
this.
the There's all
these other
Donald
worlds
was
out there.
arguing with
Yeah.
other
I don't know
managers at Epic. He believed that events were the future of storytelling, while they were
yes.
moving resources into other things. Then the team began
Yeah, I've
working
never
on the
played
most
Survive the
important
World,
event
but
yet,
apparently it's got some
Collision.
stuff in it.
The build up to this was taking place, but
So
fans
why is
were
he
confused as to
saying
what
that
was
stories
going
are
on.
dead?
It wasn't until Fortnite announced the Marvel comic
These
that we
are like
realized the bigger picture.
the guy like retired, and now there's like barely any story to be honest.
I see.
And they have to make do with what they have.
Sure. With every new issue, we would learn more about the storyline. It felt like Donald was getting a ton of mysteries off his
Yeah,
chest.
it's just like the
he needed
Marvel
us
x
to understand
Fortnite
this
comics.
event, but players still felt weird about everything being in a comic. After years of trying to figure it out ourselves, analyzing
Yeah,
the
I think like Cypher's point was like, you know, a lot of people maybe it's his age too. Like they really just want to play the game.
Yeah.
Like the story's okay, but they're not really there for it. They're like, okay. This
Yeah,
is,
but then there's like
you
the
know.
theorists out there that was just like, ooh, juicy story, lore.
Well, I mean, I think they might as well do one.
Yeah.
I think they should be doing it.
environments and cosmetics. Now everything was handed to us in a comic book, one that millions will never read. Looking back, we should have had more appreciation. The cracks were
Yeah.
beginning to form.
Whoa.
Collision was a success.
I'm
People
not a
loved
fan
the
of that.
idea of bringing back the
Creeper.
mech, recruiting Agent Jones to the Seven, and finally
yes.
defeating the IO in a huge battle. Not to mention, we got our first tease of Geno. a
Ah,
villain
the
who had been
Unchained
hinted at for
Jones, he came
years.
out for
Him
prison.
being the motive behind the Foundation and
They're coming straight in. Trust me. I've got.
Jones teaming up, to pictures of Geno on the map, players were convinced the grand reveal was coming. We expected it to be in a cinematic trailer or maybe the next event.
Oh, the
we
crow.
defeated
That was
Sloan in
sick.
the IO, but clearly it was time for Geno to take vengeance.
He has some great
there was
graphics,
so
man.
much
Yeah.
potential,
Good stuff.
so many theories, but everything
what
went
do?
wrong. When the final issue was
Stat.
released, it exposed major problems at Epic. Fans
Zero
noticed that characters
war.
were drawn incorrectly, showing how rushed the artists were. And when the comic aligned with Collision, we thought we would see a
Ah.
pretty
They're such
accurate
snob
recreation,
fans.
only for the event to be completely different.
It
So,
wasn't
should we
good
trust
enough.
The game or the comics? These revealed the true story as
he
seen
choking
in
a
the eyes of
woman?
Donald. It was his
Yeah.
actual vision. A
Wow.
live event where Marvel superheroes would help us bring back the mech and take down the IO.
Wow.
You could even
Huh.
see it in the season trailer. Doctor Strange literally
Ooh.
opened a portal on the battlefield,
cool.
and yet this was nowhere to be found in the Collision event. It wasn't even the
Yeah, that
important
was
part,
weird.
as the comics also messed with the ending. They changed an event that just happened. According to Donald's true vision,
what?
we weren't chasing after Geno for a grand finale. The reveal we were waiting for this whole time, it happened in a comic, giving us only a handful of dialogue for Fortnite's biggest villain and then killing him off. Now, it was teased at the end with a potential return, but it felt weird. We had a storyline that ended with a huge cliffhanger, but secretly wrapped up everything in a comic book. Wasn't exactly the environmental storytelling that
Rift
Fortnite
Butterfly?
became known for. Behind the
Classic.
scenes, Collision was the final event where Donald would have the freedom to tell his story. That's when it happened. Donald decided to take a step
all the
back.
NPCs,
He had
I
accelerated
hated
the
those.
storyline, explaining why the IO and 7 war felt like a finale, but happened in the middle of a chapter. This was the kind of event you would make if you were ending the storyline. After going so hard on
of
original
Zero
stories,
Build.
we took the foot off the gas with Vibin and
Really?
spent months with nothing really going on. The 7 started planning their own endings,
yeah,
like
the
a visitor
Vibin.
saying it was time to retire. And yet this whole thing was designed with one person in mind.
Yeah,
Donald
that
Mustard.
skin is in the item shop
Vibin
right
was
now.
his last season. I threw myself a fireworks show. I got Darth Vader in,
Darth
got Indiana
Vader.
Jones in, I got all the stuff that I
Indiana
needed for me. That's why that season is called Vibin. It's like
Like
a
a
celebration.
celebration,
Despite
yeah.
the magic touch and ability to bring tens of millions of people to the
just wanted all
games,
his
live
favorite
events were now going to
characters in.
happen
Yeah.
once
How
a year.
selfish.
And without Donald to supervise the Chapter 3 finale, things fell apart quick.
Cube Queen.
The first season without him, we watched as the 7 were
Oh,
consumed by
shoot.
Chrome. This was meant to happen in Donald's story,
Chrome.
but it felt wrong. There wasn't much build-up behind it, and because half of the 7 were played by famous actors or didn't have a voice at all, they vanished. The Foundation's quote-unquote death was confirmed by a helmet on the map. The Order and the Imagined also just disappeared with no explanation.
I have that
Instead of
blade.
wrapping up and starting fresh.
That
So like,
blade.
is that whole? So the Rock was in the groups. Is that based off a movie? That's just they just tried to make up a story with
They
the
just
Rock.
tried, yeah. It's kind of like it's kind of like Chapter 5, Season 1. They've like added Peter Griffin into the society, and now he's part of the lore.
Okay.
It's like really weird.
Interesting. I mean, I get what they're doing. I don't know though.
Yeah.
Actually,
I don't know if
Fortnite
that
kept going
works.
with these beloved characters, leading us to the last event of Donald's reign, Fracture. And even saying that word, most players have terrible
yeah.
memories. In what became the most hated live event, fans considered it vague, confusing, and lackluster. They pointed out how
Yeah.
nothing made sense. We spent all season preparing, saving houses from Chrome, only for the island to just explode. Then we spent like 20
Yeah.
minutes doing chores while helping Paradigm fuse everything back together, but they never
Oh, yeah, I
explained
remember
what
that.
this meant for the 7. The main villain was the Herald, and she had consumed our entire cast before imploding. Fans were disappointed when they looked in the files and spotted cutscenes for the event that never happened, a sign that something went wrong. Was it rushed deadlines, a smaller live event team, or a complete change in the story?
There's the 0
But
point
luckily
going
people
around.
forgave this because Chapter 4 was here with a season that looked like some kind of prequel.
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
potential to fix these plot holes. We had so many questions, and there was no better time to learn, except
Yeah,
none
like
of that would
snap,
happen.
snap, puzzle
The
piece.
Ageless
Snap,
and his
snap.
Oathbound Kingdom
Sweet
gave us our
looking.
best look yet into the beginnings of the IO. It was arguably a great piece of environmental storytelling, but that was about it. On the other
Yeah,
side
that
of the
guy had a
map,
cool
players
glider. He
noticed
just,
an
like,
ancient
walks
temple with a
down.
mysterious woman. In the blog post, this was called the base of the reality
Yeah, this is
warriors,
like the season
until
I
all
came back
mention
to
of this was
Fortnite.
erased from the internet. They would never talk about this place or who lived here again. As for the
They
bigger
just
picture,
dropped
we also
it.
had no
Yeah.
closure from
Wow.
the event.
So
Players
they're
wanted
really,
to know what happened to
interesting.
Jones, Paradigm, or really any of the 7. Quest eventually teased that they were all different now and in grave danger, but there wasn't much explanation of what
What?
this meant. There were also teases of a shapeless man who was secretly puppeteering the whole
Hey, it's
story.
Master Chief.
It was becoming obvious this
Nah, it's
was the real
Doomslayer.
Geno, but sadly, he was never mentioned again. We followed Amy, the scientist's assistant, as she hijacked the Rift Gate on a mission to save the 7. She built the body and transferred herself into it, but the official loading screen for this metal body was just aimed from Chapter 1, showing how even story quests were rushed.
What?
She dived into the portal, and as you could expect, we never saw her again, and the entire story would be abandoned. Our characters
The
were thrown
broken
away to do all
portal.
the
You
amazing
remember
stuff
that? We
off-screen.
landed there one
hoped
time and
this
we were
was
like,
preparing
what?
us for their
Yeah.
return in the Chapter 4 finale,
Whoa.
but if only we knew. Kato Thorne arrived
Yeah,
as
and
a
then
bloodthirsty
Kato
vampire
Thorne.
with the ability to time travel.
He had the
seemed
time
like one of the
travel.
coolest villains yet.
Yeah,
He
that,
even collected
time
artifacts
traveling
like
device
Seven's
thingy.
calendar and Midas's hand, so clearly he
Midas's
was
hand.
important. We couldn't wait to learn more about Kato and figure out
Kato's
how
like
he
a
would slot
vampire
into our
guy.
world. Wait. They killed him off with a quest? They built this guy up for months
like
and they got
vampire
rid of
stuff, so
him
it's
with
cool.
one line of dialogue. Turns out we only needed this guy for his time machine.
2018,
and Fortnite
17,
didn't
12.
bother keeping him around.
That's
Time
the
traveling
OG
wasn't even for
season.
story purposes. Sure, we could have literally saved the 7 with it, but instead they used it to take players back to Fortnite OG. Okay,
Yeah.
most players could accept it was to
The
explain
50
Chapter
the 50
1,
level
but
battle
it felt
pass.
forced.
That was
They were
weird.
getting into a pattern of randomly bringing back iconic characters to get us interested in the story, only to pretend it never happened. Remember Sloane? She planned this OG mission, but once it was
Jeez.
over, she straight up vanished and hasn't been acknowledged since. events.
He might
George
come
has
back,
finally
I don't
brought back
know.
for OG,
Yeah, you never
only to
know.
drive around and prepare us for the event, one that was never explained in the first
Yep,
place.
the
But
rocket,
involved putting the time
Eminem's
machine
arrival.
onto the rocket from chapter 1, but we had no idea why, and despite the fact that 7 were the whole point of this, we never heard from them. Turns out this chapter 4 finale wasn't going to be a grand explanation or the return of the 7, it was the Big Bang, an advertisement
the Big
for a new
Bang,
beginning.
Eminem came.
This new beginning wasn't just for Fortnite,
Interesting.
but also Donald Mustard. After an incredible adventure, I will be retiring from my role at Epic this month.
Yeah,
I'm humbled
like,
to have been a part of a
I
team
was
that every day
surprised.
tries to bring joy and delight to the Fortnite community. So it sounded like he was moving on, but this week the true reason why he left was revealed. By mid-2022, Epic was committing to make LEGO Fortnite and racing. To build all this stuff,
I
it takes
really
so many
don't
people
know.
and so much time.
LEGO
Basically,
Fortnite is
the
just
event
like
team is
off-brand
starting to be needed
Minecraft.
for other stuff, and it was devastating
popular,
to me because
though,
I'm
right?
like, this
A
is
little.
actually the magic, and not everyone at Epic agrees with that. And that's what we gotta remember. There are still tons of Epic team members who care. With the Titan Hand build-up capturing the environmental
Oh my
storytelling that
gosh.
made this
The
world
shooting
so
the
great,
chains,
maybe
everyone
we
got
just need
so
to give
hyped
it
up.
time.
Yeah, that was a cool event. That was
Yeah.
like my first event.